מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא יחסר, בנודש ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינהלני, נפשי ישובב, ינחני במקלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני, תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. דשנת בשם ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבת בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, Yishem Adonai mevarach. The Lord has given, the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. We gather here today to express our abiding love, to honor and say goodbye to our beloved Lilyan Torch, who this week was taken from us. Our hearts heavy with sadness over her passing. Lilyan was a beautiful, joyous, warm, sweet, comforting presence in your lives. It's hard to imagine that she is not there now. But we draw strength from the wonderful memories, the gift of her life, the ways in which she shared her love and her protection and her nurturing with each of you. I'd like to call upon Ron and Michelle and their children to come forward to share some reflections.
Well, Mom, it's been quite a ride, 102 years. Family always comes first. You loved your husband, Sam, more than anything, despite some of the disagreements, like you wanting to stay home and clean the house instead of going on vacation to Florida, or the time when Dad wanted a 25th wedding anniversary party and you didn't because the carpet would get dirty. Dad won that one. He won the Florida one too. And despite your initial misgivings, you managed to enjoy the vacations and parties immensely and the time you had with him. You loved Mark and me and always put us first and did everything for us, like serving us dinner each night on the red folding TV tables in front of the TV so we could watch The Little Rascals. The same red folding tables you fed your grandkids on when they wanted to watch TV. You always picked us up from Roland Elementary School anytime it rained because you didn't want us to get wet. God forbid. When I drove to Kent State, all of 45 minutes away, you had tears in your eyes because you missed and loved me that much. The grandkids came along, and you did everything for them too. Stuart, Kevin, Alec, Corey, and Brian. You fed them, changed them, babysat, and cared for them like they were your own. You loved them. When our boys were still in diapers, and Michelle and I had tickets to a play on a Saturday and desperately looking for a babysitter, you volunteered. We didn't want to burden you because you were over 80 at that time, but we didn't have a choice. But you were adamant about babysitting, so we left our kids in your good care. When we returned after midnight, we found you sound asleep on the couch and the boys sitting in front of the TV, eating snacks, watching The Late Show with Johnny Carson. Oy vey. Selfless, always doing for others. That's my mom. It started with your parents who moved in with us around 1960 and lived with us until their passing. Mom, you nursed them through their terminal illnesses, and refused to send them to a nursing home or hospice. And you did the same for your husband, Sam, too. You gave unconditional love to me and Mark and helped us take care of and raise our children. No questions asked. You wanted nothing in return. You just loved your family and wanted to be there for all of us. You also loved to do for others. You went shopping for Sylvia and the neighbors, brought them bags of groceries from Mark's and produce from Dad, and delivered to their doors because it wasn't enough to just get it for them. You picked up the neighbors' kids from school when they were sick. You asked for nothing back. It was your nature to be kind and good and selfless. And I believe that God gave you a long, illness-free life because of your giving kindness. Candy Uberalis. Your motto was always salami over chicken, ice cream over Chinese food, brownies over hamburgers, pizza and French fries over steak, and milk chocolate candy over everything. This was your secret to a long life. Eat as much junk food as possible. So living by that motto, my brother Mark and I decided to go on a quest inside of our house to find your secret candy stash. For months, your hiding place eluded us, but one day, when I decided to do a load of laundry, by accident, I discovered your entire stash inside the washing machine. Shopping bags full of candy, hard candy, soft candy, chewy candy, sweet candy, sour candy, red candy, but most of all, your favorite, milk chocolate candy. Quickly, I called to Mark, and we ate so much candy that we made ourselves sick to our stomachs and vowed not to eat any more candy for at least one more day. Bowling, exercise, and gin rummy. Boy, oh boy, did you like playing gin rummy with your neighborhood lady friends. Every Monday night, and did you put out a spread of candy and junk food? I couldn't wait. Bowling was next up, twice a week with your sister Ida and the Roland PTA. What a great bowler you were. All that power packed into your little 4 feet 11-inch frame. Boy, did you get mad when you missed a spare. Whew. How about aerobics at Elaine Powers? You started in your 30s and finished in your 80s. I remember that you came home one day and told me you looked around the studio and everyone was in their 20s and 30s except you. You couldn't understand what happened to your contemporaries and why on earth they stopped going when they were 60 and 70. To our mom, Diamond Lil, you're going to be reunited with your true one love, Cadillac Sam, now and for the rest of eternity. Rest in peace, Mom. We love you. glasses.
Mom. I only got through one word. The first time I met you, I called you Mom. Ron and I had been dating a couple of months, and he was bringing me home to meet you. He asked you if you could call Mr. Weisberg, the family jeweler, to bring some diamonds over to the house. When I met you, I knew we were getting married, and I immediately called you Mom, and only called you Mom from that day forward. That was almost 31 years ago. Mom, you were a pistol. You swore like a sailor and had no filters. Whatever thought you had came out of your mouth. So if you thought someone was too skinny or too fat, or the belly was too big, or you didn't like their hair or the shirt they wore, it came right out of your mouth. And when you saw them, it didn't matter if it was a stranger or someone you knew, but you never said an unkind word to me ever. You never once told me you didn't like my hair or my outfit or anything. You never had an unkind word to say to me ever. And as you all can attest, you had a comment for everybody except family. Family was so important to you, and no matter what, you were always kind to family. Over the years, as your family grew, you loved seeing your grandkids, Stuart and Kevin, Alec, Brian, and Corey. But when the great-grandkids came, that was your real joy. You loved babies, and we used to say when you got a visit from Kyler, Orrin, Lincoln, and Quinn, it added months to your life. Maybe that was part of the reason you lived to 102. That and candy. When my twins were born, Brian and Corey, you were the one that came to stay with me for 2 weeks when I brought those two little babies home. Alec was just 20 months, and you and I used to do the changings and feedings when we got spit up on and thrown up on and peed on. You were like a mom to me. I remember beaming with pride. I remember beaming with pride when you would introduce me to people and say, "This is not my daughter-in-law, this is my daughter." We did a lot of mother and daughter things together. Doctor visits, food shopping, clothing shopping, and shopping for your grandson's bar mitzvah outfits and then for their weddings. You loved getting your nails done, and when you were no longer driving, we used to pick you up and bring you to our house on Sunday so I could polish your nails, and oh, how you loved that. You loved the holidays. I remember in Connecticut, and then when we moved back to Cleveland, you would come over to our house for the holidays. You would come in and immediately look for the junk food and sit down at the kitchen table and start to eat. The boys would tattle on you. "Mom, Grandma's eating and ruining her appetite for dinner." And sure enough, dinner would come, and you wouldn't want much to eat. But then again, it was real food, like chicken and potatoes and soup, and you never really ate real food. So you told us you were full until we cleared the plates and announced that we were ready for dessert, and miraculously, you were able to find some room. Hanukkah was one of your favorites, and I had so many fond memories of you and me in the kitchen, grating potatoes, mincing onions, and making latkes. Now, if you know me, you know I'm a pretty healthy eater, and Mom is, well, not. And I would put just enough oil in the pan to get the latkes brown. And one time I left the room to get something, and I returned to find that half the bottle of oil was gone. I turned to Mom and asked her if she poured it into the pan, and she looked at me and did this. Because it wasn't really a potato latke unless it sank in your stomach like a lead balloon and required an entire roll of Rolaids when you were finished eating. But Mom's favorite holiday was, of course, Halloween. We would bring her to our house under the guise that we needed her to help passing out the candy. Ron would take the boys trick-or-treating around the neighborhood while Mom and I stayed home to pass out the candy. The doorbell would ring with a group of neighborhood kids in costume, and I turned around, but there was no bowl of candy. I looked back into the living room, and there was Mom with a bowl, picking out the candy she wanted to eat. I had to wrench it out of her arms, telling her there was a group of kids at the door waiting for their candy. We used to make the kids come back halfway through their run and spread their candy loot out onto the floor. They used to scream, "Mom, Grandma's taking all the good candy." And we'd send them back out again to collect some more. When we moved you to Menora Park, we used to try to bust you out as much as we could. We would take you over to Geraci's for pizza or spaghetti and meatballs, and when it got too much for you to transport you in and out of the car, we would ask the nurses to put you in the front seat, and we would drive you over to East Coast Custard for vanilla ice cream. How you love that. Over the years, you started to get more forgetful and get people's names, and you would get people and their names mixed up, but you never forgot my name. Through CPAPs and in the ICU, you looked at me and called out to me, "Michelle, my love," you said to me. Sometimes you'd get confused when Ronnie and I would visit. I'd get a kick out of it when we would see you and you would announce, "My daughter and her husband are here." And the nurses would burst out laughing. Sometimes you would forget who people were, or you'd ask who the man was that was sitting next to me, but you never forgot who I was and always knew my name. When they moved you to Fairmont, the last unit you were in, when we arrived, the nurses came out to see me. They said they wanted to meet Michelle because Mom kept talking about me. Mom, I was blessed. Because I didn't have a mother-in-law, I had another mom. You loved me unconditionally with all your heart, and I was so blessed to have you as my mom. How lucky am I?
In 6th grade, my teacher, Mr. Stewart, once said, when he passes away, he doesn't want people to cry at his funeral. He wants people to laugh. He wants people to remember the good times and the happy times and not think about how those times won't be around anymore. So I'd like to share a few anecdotes about my grandma, and I encourage all of you, if you want, to smile, to laugh, and to think happy thoughts. When she was about 90 years old and living on her own, we decided to introduce her to our 2 dogs, one at a time. First came Harley, a little 10-pound Shih Tzu, and he came running into the room and jumped up on her lap and immediately started licking her face, and my grandma immediately fell in love. And then came Ginger, our 50-pound German Shepherd, who came barreling into the room, almost knocked her out of her chair, and started whacking her repeatedly with her tail. Needless to say, she liked Harley a little bit more. A couple years later, we were all out in Coventry at a restaurant celebrating Lil's birthday, and we were all looking over the menu. And Stuart looks over and says, "Lil, what do you want to eat?" She's looking at the menu. She points, she's like, "I'll have that. It was bacon cheese fries. How kosher." As she got older, we moved her into Menora Park, but that didn't stop us from visiting her as often as we could. And one day, we came to visit her, and she broke down crying. I said, "Grandma, why are you crying?" She said, "Because I love my family so much." Dad, you would always say Grandma's full of piss and vinegar. She's a pistol. But anyone who really knew Lil well, her friends and her family and those around her, knew that she was a loving, kind, warm person. Grandma, I didn't need you to change my diapers or help me with my homework. You were my grandma. Your one job was to be a constant rock, a source of love and warmth and happiness, and that's what you were for me, and for that, I thank you. I love you very much.
I want to read 2 statements that were written also by Mark and Leslie's sons, by Stuart and by Kevin. Stuart wrote a paragraph each on 3 highlights that stood out to him about Lil. The first is cooking. She met every criteria for the traditional Jewish grandmother who loved to cook and feed her family. The fare ranged from her signature dishes like matzo ball soup, the best I've ever had, seriously, chocolate brownies that she baked and froze by the dozen, potato latkes, masa brie, and noodle kugel, to more obscure yet tasty items like her meatloaf smothered in Campbell's vegetable alphabet soup. Nurturing. From the time I was born until I was in my mid-teens, she was one of my primary caretakers. She always let my brother and me eat meals in her living room on tray tables so we could watch Price is Right and Wheel of Fortune with her. What a treat. By the time I was in my early 20s, the roles were reversed. I brought her meals, paid her bills, and checked in on her regularly when my law office was around the corner from her house in South Euclid. It felt good to pay back some of the kindness and love she had given me over the years. Legacy. We are blessed that my 3 children were able to get to know Grandma Lil and form memories of sharing bags of Hershey's Kisses and playing games with her. Having been widowed in 1972 and then living independently for over 3 decades after makes her the strongest person I have ever known, particularly for someone who never eclipsed 4'11" in height. That was from Stuart, and the following is from Kevin. Grandma Lil was flat out the nicest woman I have ever met, and she lived for her family, especially spoiling her grandkids. I cannot remember her ever getting angry at anything. She would always go out of her way to make sure we were all happy. Whenever I was at her house, I would pull up her comfy rocking chair to watch TV, and she would make me salads just the way I liked them, with the lettuce cut in extra small pieces, large chunks of fresh tomatoes, and tons of wishbone Italian dressing. For dessert, she would also let me get a brownie or lemon cookie out of her freezer. When I was really lucky, she would make my favorite meal, which was her handmade matzo ball soup that would take her 48 hours to cook. As long as I didn't tell my mother, she would let me stay up late when she was watching me. Lil loved her foods salty or sweet. Her house was always stocked with butterscotch candies, and if you knew where to really look, she was always hiding a stash of her favorite Hershey Kisses. For a while, she was hooked on Freshen Up gum in the 80s, which was a kind of gum that when you first chewed it, some liquid mint would come out from the middle. Whenever I found that hidden in her dresser, I knew I hit the gold mine. Grandma used to take me everywhere with her. If it was to the JCC for her workout classes, the bowling alley for her league, or just for a late-night power walk around South Euclid. When I was 14, I asked if I could drive her car around Bexley Park, using the excuse that I would be getting my temporary license soon. And as always, she happily obliged. When I was 15 and we were shopping at Giant Eagle together, and I asked her if she would buy me beer, which she also happily obliged, with the caveat not to tell my father. At my surprise 16th birthday party, she walked in with her usual moxie and wasn't afraid to dance or raise the roof with my friends. Lil always put a smile on my face. It's hard to say goodbye to someone you absolutely adore and only have the fondest memories of. Simply stated, she was the best. I'll remember her for not only being kind and warm, but I'll also remember her for her sense of humor, her funny idiosyncrasies, and just being there when I needed her. Grandma, thanks for always putting us first. Thanks for never yelling at me, even after all the mischief I used to get into around your house. Thanks for always watching me as a kid so I didn't need a babysitter. I feel horrible that I cannot be there today as I am out of town. I will be drinking a Werner's in your memory tonight. It was your stocked basement cellar with Werner's that likely kept them in business versus Canada Dry all those years. I love you, Lil. Love, Tatala. So many beautiful, extraordinary memories. So much love. All of us can hear that love in your words. Ron and Michelle and Alec, and the words of Stuart and Kevin, and the words the rest of the family shared with me as we met yesterday. We know that you carry deep abiding love for Lil. We pray those memories should always be with you. Lil was a loving, devoted sister, very close with Ida and Nelson, and a loving sister to Buddy and Aline of blessed memory, and a loving sister-in-law to Esther and Saul and Blanche and Harry, all of blessed memory. She was a loving, devoted, caring wife to her Sam. A loving mother to you, Ron and Michelle, and to you, Mark and Leslie. A loving grandmother to you, Stuart and Cassandra, Kevin and Essa, Alec, Brian, and Corey. A loving great-grandmother to Lincoln, Oren, Quinn, and Kyler. All of you loved Lilyan in life, and now are left to revere her memory in death. And we pray that all these sweet memories that you've shared continue to sustain you and to allow you to feel her love, her warmth, her presence in your lives. Lil was born here in Cleveland in 1915. She was the oldest of 3 children. She grew up in the Kinsman neighborhood and went to John Hay High School. She was very close and devoted to her parents and her siblings. And Ron and Mark, when you were growing up, the whole family lived together in one house. Your family upstairs, your grandparents downstairs. I just shared a little bit of reflection on what Lilyan was like in her youth. None of it particularly surprising if you knew Lil the rest of her life. She was, I'd have said, a bit of a daredevil and a risk taker. She loved riding on a motorcycle. She wanted to drive a car ahead of her time. She loved to drive fast, or to stand on the running board as a car was being driven. And in later years, I recall, Ron and Mark, you said that she got many speeding tickets, and that your father, Sam, had to fix them. He would drop off a lot of produce to the police. At just 4'11", she needed to be propped up on pillows in order to be able to drive, to see out the window. And you shared that when she would go for a manicure and she would drive up, that the young folk in the manicure shop would be startled to see a car coming that looked like it was driving itself because they couldn't see her. She had a lot of energy. She hated going to bed at night. She would stay up late until her eyeballs collapsed and fall asleep in front of the TV with a bowl of ice cream. Sam and Lilyan were very devoted to each other. Enjoyed a very special relationship. It was not a demonstrative relationship. That was not that generation. But you knew the love and you could feel it. Sam worked long hours. Lilyan always made sure there was a meal waiting for him when he would come home. She always took care of him. Your dad had a bar down by Silver's Temple, Torchy's. Lilyan was the barmaid there. She worked in the bar. And later, Sam opened a produce store on Taylor Road, and still later went into a partnership in a produce store on the west side near State and Brook Park, and she worked in those stores as well. And every Sunday night, Sam would dump out cash, receipts, and bills onto their table, and Lilyan would sort through it all, preparing deposits and writing checks. She was a full partner in that business, ensuring its success, looking after your father as he looked after the business. As a mother, Lilyan always put family first. It was your father who was the disciplinarian. Your mother was your protector. And even when she would tattle on you to your father, then when he would go to punish you, she would intervene. No, don't do that to them. Let them be. She was warm and selfless and giving and nurturing. And you were very close your whole lives. Ron and Michelle, Mark and Leslie. She loved you and she loved your children, and she was a very, very proud grandmother and great-grandmother. She went to her grandchildren's school events. Alec, when you blew shofar in the synagogue, she was there in the front to watch you blow, and she was just beaming. She loved nothing more than being with family, for parties, for holidays. Michelle and Leslie, she loved you. Michelle, as you reflected as your own children, as her own children. And Michelle, I know that the two of you have a very special bond going back to that time you described when the boys were born. The secret of her living long? Well, you heard it already. She remained active. She maintained close relationship with her friends. She played gin and gin rummy. She even bowled into her 80s. She did aerobics her whole life. She walked around the block. But the thing that kept her going most was that noshing and junk food. Never real food, except getting as close as pizza from Dracy's or a burger from Mobby's. And she did squeeze fresh orange juice, but that's sweet. Her refrigerator was typically empty. Maybe a little cottage cheese, a can of pineapple, a salami. Once, Ron and Michelle, I don't remember the occasion, but I remember that you had said that you had cooked her this dinner of roasted chicken, and she said to you, I just want a salami sandwich. She was not the greatest cook, but she was a great baker and sweet maker. And she made fabulous brownies and rugelach that she would freeze and save for the family. And not just sweets, she also loved to make ribbonis. Lil was a voracious reader. She went to the library all the time, and she loved to take her grandchildren there. She always had a book, usually a romance novel. She loved using her Yiddish. She called the children and grandchildren Tatala, or by Yiddish diminutives of their name, and Ron and Mark, you learned a great deal of Yiddish from her. She loved watching baseball and the Indians. But the thing she most loved was you, her family. She was a nurturer and a caretaker by nature. She took care of her parents as they aged, and she took care of all of you. Both of her parents had cancer, as did Sam. She nursed them at home, refusing to let them go to a hospice. She was very close with her sister Ida, calling her several times a day. You know, everything happens for a reason. And your mother, Lilyan, passed away just before the festival of Purim. And here we are on the holiday, on the Chag. One of the most joyous days in the Jewish calendar, saying goodbye to her. And maybe that's not a coincidence either. First of all, this is, after all, the Jewish candy holiday. This is a day on which we bake sweets, hamantashen, and put them together with chocolates and candies, and send them out to each other as gifts, mishloach manot. and gorge ourselves on sweets as we celebrate, it seems like the right day to say goodbye to your mom. It's also the day that we celebrate Esther, one of the great heroines of the Jewish people. And Esther was responsible for saving the Jewish people when she approached Ahasuerus to reveal Haman's plot. The entire future of the Jewish people rested in her hands. And so she becomes a model of what it means to care, to protect, and to nurture. And your mom was an Esther. May you always, always feel the sweetness of her love in your life. May you always feel her nurturing and her care. May you always hear her voice in your ear, feel her embrace, be comforted and strengthened and supported by it. May God watch over her and give her rich reward for all the love that she shared, for all the goodness. And we say it together, Amen. We'll rise now with the memorial blessing.
Eloah selichot, chanun verachum, erech apayim verav chesed, hametzech hapara pesha, v'akravat yesham, umenucha nechona, תחת כנפי השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, הנשמעת לילה בלה בת אברהם ורשקה, שלחה לעולמם. Anam Balarachamim Zachar Lalatova Kol Zechiyotea V'tzikotea B'yaratzor Chayim Uvetach La Share Tzedek Ve'yoram Sharechem Lavachanina בסייתך כנפיך, הסתיריה לעולמים. בצרור החיים ונשמתם, אדוני, הוא נחלתם, ותנוח בשלום, על משכבה ונאמר אמן.
God of forgiveness, you who are gracious and compassionate, patient and abundantly kind, we pray that you grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of our beloved Lilyan, who has gone to her eternal home. O merciful one, we ask that you remember all the worthy and righteous deeds she performed in the land of the living. May she find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May the Lord be her portion. May she rest in peace. May she be bound up in the bond of eternal life. And we say together, Amen. Interment will follow at Lincoln Cemetery, after which the family will gather at Ron and Michelle's home, 38410 Flanders Drive in Solon, We'll hold a brief service upon returning from the cemetery, and again at 7 p.m. tonight. Visitation today until 9 p.m. And then Friday from 1 to 5 p.m. and Saturday night 7 to 9 p.m. Contributions are suggested to Menorah Park or B'nai Yeshurun congregation.